Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really focusing in on something super practical for a lot of you listeners, mastering IELTS writing. We got a great set of materials from a listener, actually. Some excerpts from Writing Master Final Edition.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that one. Pretty comprehensive.
Exactly. And the idea is to sort of cut through all the information out there and really pinpoint the essential grammar and style stuff, the things that'll genuinely boost your Task 2 score.
Right. We want to distill it down, give you actionable insights, without just throwing the whole textbook at you.
Yeah, no overwhelm, just clear takeaways.
Think of it as, like, a focus guide. We're demystifying the core rules, showing you the common traps.
So you can write those well-structured, persuasive essays more effectively.
That's the goal. Stronger academic English, specifically for the test.
Okay, let's get into it then. First up, IELTS Writing Task 2. What's the core challenge here, really?
Well, task 2 is where you respond to a viewpoint or maybe an argument, sometimes a problem.
Right, the formal essay.
Exactly. At least 250 words, and you've got about 40 minutes, which isn't a huge amount of time.
Yeah, the clock's ticking.
And the examiners, they're looking for quite a bit. It's not just, does this person know some fancy words?
No, it's deeper than that.
Definitely. Can you actually understand the question properly? Can you build a logical argument? Can you back it up?
Support your points, yeah.
How's your organization? Is it clear, coherent? Do you use a good range of grammar? And crucially, is it accurate?
And that formal academic tone. Can't forget that.
Absolutely vital. That all adds up.
Okay, makes sense. So building this formal essay, where do we start? The source material kicks off with the absolute basics, sentence structure.
Yep, the bedrock, SVO, subject, verb, object.
Like the student wrote an essay.
Exactly. Or government should tackle climate change. Simple, clear. Pollution harms health. That's your foundation.
Seems straightforward enough, but for IELTS, just basic SVO probably isn't going to cut it for a high score.
Right. You need to show more control, more sophistication. That's where adding detail comes in. Adjectives, adverbs.
So instead of just the student wrote an essay, it becomes, what was the example?
The dedicated student carefully wrote a persuasive essay. See? More descriptive, more precise.
Adds layers.
And the source mentions practice exercises, which I think are really useful. Things like jumbling up sentences for you to reorder or finishing sentences.
Sentence completion, yeah.
Those activities really help embed that basic structure in your mind. It becomes more automatic.
I can see that. Actively playing with the parts helps it stick.
Okay, so we have these basic sentences. How do we weave them into something, well, more impressive?
Good question. That brings us to compound and complex sentences. These are essential for showing range.
Okay, break those down. Compound first.
Compound sentences are basically two or more simple sentences, independent clauses, meaning they could stand alone, joined together.
With words like and, but, so.
Exactly. You're coordinating conjunctions. And, but, or so, for, nor yet. Simple linking. Got it. And complex sentences.
Complex sentences are a bit different. They combine an independent clause, one that can stand alone, with one or more subordinate clauses.
Subordinate meaning it can't stand alone, needs the main clause.
Precisely. And these subordinate clauses often start with subordinating conjunctions, words like because, although, while, if, when.
Like the example, because air pollution is a major problem. That part needs the rest of the sentence.
Many cities are promoting public transportation. Yep. The first part depends on the second.
And why is mastering these so important for IELTS? Is it just about sounding, academic?
It's more than that. It shows linguistic maturity, definitely. But functionally, it lets you connect ideas much more precisely.
Ah, like showing cause and effect.
Exactly, or contrast or conditions. It makes your arguments clearer, more nuanced, and it massively improves the flow, the coherence of your writing.
Okay, so moving from simple bricks to more intricate structures makes sense. Now, the source also goes into articles and plural nouns, the fiddly bits.
Oh, they can absolutely trip you up. Articles A and the. Simple words, complex rules sometimes.
And for general stuff, right? I need a pen.
Yep, indefinite. When it's not a specific one, then the is the definite article for something specific or something already mentioned. The pen I lost. Or unique things like the earth.
And the source had examples of common mistakes.
Yeah, like saying more better job opportunity. That's wrong on 2 counts. The article is likely wrong depending on context. And more better is redundant. It should be a better job opportunity or the best job opportunity.
Good catch. Okay, and plurals. Not always just adding an S.
Definitely not. You've got your regular cat, cats, book, books, easy.
But then the irregulars.
Right. Vowel changes like man, men, tooth, teeth, complete word changes, child, children, person, people, and some that don't change at all. Sheep, fish, deer.
And for academic writing, those tricky Latin and Greek ones.
Crucial. You absolutely need to know these. Data is plural, datum is singular.
Even though people use data as informally.
Informally, yes, but informal academic writing, like IELTS, stick to data are. The source is clear on that.
Okay, good rule to remember.
And others. Bacteria, bacterium, criterion, phenomena, phenomenon, alumni, alumnus for male, alumna for female.
Thesis, hypothesis?
And this analysis, the list goes on. Knowing these signals academic competence.
It really does. Okay, another grammar cornerstone. Subject-verb agreement.
Yes, absolutely fundamental. Get this wrong, and your writing just sounds off.
The basic rule is simple, though. Singular subject, singular verb, plural subject, plural verb.
That's the core, the research shows, versus the studies show.
But where does it get complicated? The source mentioned a few areas.
It does. Compound subjects, for instance. If you link two subjects with and, you generally use a plural verb. The student and the professor are collaborating.
Okay. What else?
Indefinite pronouns, words like everyone, anybody, each, neither. These are usually treated as singular. Everyone needs to register.
That catches people out.
It does. And intervening phrases, this is a big one. You have a phrase between the subject and the verb.
Like your example earlier.
Right. The impact of climate change on coastal communities is significant. The verb is agrees with impact, singular, not communities, plural. You have to identify the true subject.
Ignore the noise in the middle. Got it. Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Punctuation, commas, and em-dashes specifically.
Powerful tools, often underestimated. Commas have so many jobs.
Like in lists.
Yep, separating items. We need policies for education, healthcare, and infrastructure. Also for separating clauses in compound and complex sentences.
And those complex lists with places.
Yes, using semicolons to separate list items that themselves contain commas, like attendees came from London, UK, Paris, France, and Rome, Italy. Clears things up.
Okay. And em-dashes, they feel a bit more dramatic.
They can be. An em-dash like this one can create a stronger break than a comma.
For emphasis.
Yes. Or to set off a parenthetical thought. Something extra like that. Or even to introduce a summary or an explanation at the end of a sentence. The results were clear. We needed to change strategy.
Versatile. Adds a different rhythm.
It does. Use them sparingly, but effectively.
Good tip. Now, hyphenated adjectives. I see these used inconsistently, let's say.
Yes. The rule is, when two or more words act together as a single adjective before a noun, you usually hyphenate them.
Like a well-written essay.
Exactly. The source gives loads of great examples. Eye-opening experience, state-of-the-art technology, long-term plan, sugar-free drink.
And with numbers, too. A 10-year-old boy.
Yep. 2-ton truck, 5-star hotel, 7-fold increase. The hyphen links the words, so they clearly modify the noun together.
That list in the source is super helpful for reference.
Okay, moving into slightly more advanced territory, passive voice and relative clauses.
Right, passive voice. It gets a bad rap sometimes, but it has its place.
When is it useful? Mainly when the action is more important than who did it, or when the doer is unknown or obvious. The new policy was implemented last week. We might not care exactly who implemented it, or mistakes were made.
Classic passive example.
It is. And relative clauses, using who, which, that, where, when, whose are brilliant for adding extra information without starting a new sentence.
Like the scientist who made the discovery became famous.
Perfect. But you need to know the comma rule here. Defining versus non-defining clauses.
Remind us.
A defining clause gives essential information. No commas. The book that I borrowed is overdue. We need that I borrowed to know which book.
Okay.
A non-defining clause adds extra non-essential info. It needs commas. Professor Jones, who is an expert in genetics, gave the lecture. The core sentence works without the who clause.
Right, essential versus extra info. That distinction matters. And the source mentioned reducing these clauses, making them shorter.
Yes, for conciseness. It makes writing tighter. If you have pronoun plus verb, you can sometimes just drop the pronoun if it's the object. The film that we watched. Or if it's pronoun plus active verb, you can often use the ing form, people eating meat, instead of people who eat meat.
More efficient.
And if it's pronoun plus passive verb, you can often just use the past participle. The report published last year instead of the report that was published last year.
Nice shortcuts. The source also mentioned using to plus verb.
Yeah. After words like first, last, only, and superlatives, she was the first person to arrive. This is the best way to solve it.
Very useful refinements. Okay, making sure the essay actually flows logically. The source stresses cohesion and coherence, transition words, and pronoun referencing.
Absolutely critical. These are like the glue and signposts for your reader.
Transition words show the relationship between ideas.
Exactly. Addition. Moreover. Furthermore. In addition. Contrast. However, on the other hand, nevertheless, cause-effect. Therefore, as a result, consequently, sequence. Firstly, next, finally. They guide the reader through your argument.
And pronoun referencing, that's about avoiding repetition.
Yes, but also maintaining clarity. Using pronouns like it, they, this, that correctly links back to things you've already mentioned. The source also lists useful referencing words like one, both, neither, such, the former, the latter.
So instead of saying the government's policy, you might say the government's policy it aims to, or this policy.
Precisely. It makes the writing smoother, less clunky, and easier to follow. Assuming the reference is clear, of course.
Right. Now, avoiding mistakes, the source flagged some common pitfalls.
Always good to know what not to do. A big one is relying only on short, simple sentences. It sounds choppy, immature.
So the fix is to combine them, using those compound and complex structures we talked about.
Exactly. Use conjunctions, relative clauses, participles to link ideas and create more sophisticated sentences. The source showed examples of combining simple sentences effectively.
Good. Another pitfall mentioned was lexical selection, picking the wrong word.
Oh yeah, this can really undermine your meaning. The source gave examples like mixing up affect, usually a verb, and effect, usually a noun.
A classic confusion.
Or using vague words like good or nice when you need something more precise like effective, beneficial, significant, or feasible. Word choice really matters for academic tone. Distinguishing information, often uncountable, from data, plural, technically. Little things that show precision.
Details matter. Okay, another interesting point was about tentative language. Hedging.
Yes, hedging. Hugely important in academic writing. You rarely want to make absolute 100% certain claims unless it's a proven fact.
Why is that?
Well, it shows caution, nuance, and understanding that knowledge evolves. To avoid sounding dogmatic, you soften your claims.
How do you do that?
Several ways. Use tentative verbs. Seem, appear, suggest, tend. Adverbs. Probably, possibly, likely, arguably, perhaps. Modal verbs. May, might, could, can, in its possibility sense.
So instead of technology causes unemployment, maybe technology may contribute to unemployment, or it seems likely that technology impacts employment.
Exactly. Much more academic, much more cautious. You can also use frequency words, sometimes, often, generally, quantity words, approximately, roughly, or introductory phrases like, it could be argued that, or in some cases.
It's about expressing degrees of certainty.
Precisely. Acknowledging complexity.
Right. And for those aiming high, band score-wise, the source mentioned specific vocabulary and linking words.
It did. It listed the top 20 most common words and top 10 keywords found in high-scoring essays. So just memorizing lists isn't the answer.
No magic bullet.
But being familiar with common academic vocabulary is definitely helpful. And it highlighted key linking words again. For example, however, therefore, in conclusion, despite, additionally. Using these appropriately and accurately boosts your score.
Good pointers. Finally, a quick look at Task 1, describing visuals. The source covered this briefly.
Yet, different kettle of fish from Task 2. Task 1 is about describing data from graphs, charts, tables, or maybe explaining a process diagram.
The key is accuracy, right? Understanding the visual properly.
Absolutely. You need to accurately report the main features, trends, comparisons. The source gives examples of introductory phrases like, the graph illustrates, or as can be seen from the table. Avoid just saying, this graph shows. Be a bit more formal.
And it mentions specific language.
Yes. Language for describing trends, increase, decrease, fluctuate, plateau. Language for making comparisons higher than, the lowest, similar to, using the right vocabulary for time periods and measurements.
And the style is different too, more objective.
Much more objective. No opinions. Avoid informal language. Don't tell a story. Be concise. Avoid repetition. For diagrams, especially process diagrams, you'll often use the present simple tense and passive voice. First, the materials are mixed, then the mixture is heated. And use connectors that show sequence. Firstly, next, subsequently, finally.
Okay, so a very different skill set required there compared to the Task 2 essay.
Definitely. Task 1 is reporting. Task 2 is arguing.
All right, this has been incredibly thorough. Let's try and wrap up the key takeaways for our listener.
Okay, so number 1, build from that solid SVO foundation. Then learn to construct varied, complex sentences accurately.
Master the grammar essentials, articles, plurals, subject-verb agreement. Get your punctuation right, especially commas.
Use transition words and pronoun referencing effectively for that smooth, logical flow. Cohesion and coherence are vital.
And watch out for those common errors. Don't overuse simple sentences. Choose your words carefully.
Embrace tentative language hedging for that academic sophistication. Don't make absolute claims unless you're sure.
And remember, Task 1 requires a different objective style focused on describing visual information accurately.
That pretty much covers the core grammar and style points from the source material.
Fantastic. So for our listener who sent this in, the advice is clear. Dive back into those practice exercises in the Writing Master source. Focus on your specific weak spots.
Yeah, targeted practice is key. And maybe think about this. Improving your grasp of English grammar and academic style isn't just about the IELTS score.
True. It has broader benefits.
Definitely. It sharpens your thinking, enhances your communication skills overall in university and your career. So perhaps a final thought for you to consider. Beyond these grammar points, what other areas of academic English could you explore to really unlock that next level of communication clarity and effectiveness?